Last video, I told you God will not reveal you to anyone he's hid you from, even if you marry the person. But hear me, I got to give you the other side of that spectrum. I got to give you the perspective of the person who has no revelation of you. You ever been super good to a person? It just seems like they're almost always frustrated with you, always just aggravated. Have you ever wondered why? Get this. They get to watch you be a blessing to everybody else who has a revelation of you, but they don't get to enjoy that blessing. I'm going to give it to you like this. My grandmother left my granddad for his best friend. I was like 5 or 6 years old when that happened, but it happened. The best friend and his wife had lived on my granddad's property. I'm pretty sure that was his property and a house behind the property, kind of adjacent to it. They were neighbors and besties. The guy was best friends with my granddad and his wife was best friends with my grandmother. One day, the wife passed away. My granddad and my grandma went out of their way to make sure that the guy was comforted. We'll call him Mr. Williams. So my grandma started going over to the house all the time to comfort Mr. Williams. She was comforting him all right. But no, for real, this man was a narcissist. My grandmother, I can honestly say she was incredibly passive. Not making excuses for her, just stating the obvious. Anywho, she would go over there, take place to him, sit up with him. And one day she decided not to come back home. He either wouldn't open the door, he would tell my family that she wasn't there. Eventually, my family had to fill out a missing persons report. Cops went to his house and there she was, sitting in the house. She told the police she didn't want to have anything else to do with her children and that she was leaving her husband. So my granddad was incredibly heartbroken. The family was mad at my grandma, and her new dude, they ended up moving away about 45 minutes. Let me tell you something. My granddad had a revelation of my grandmother. The other guy didn't. My granddad used to buy my grandmother everything, and I do mean everything. She had so many clothes, he had to buy her shift robes. She had a few of them. He kept getting her hair done. Not saying that he was perfect, but I will say that he was intentional. He really treated her like a lady. Mr. Williams, on the other hand, Satan scraped that dude out of the butt crack of hell. This guy was so controlling and abusive. He wouldn't allow my grandmother to wear any dresses. She had to wear his clothes. He wouldn't let her get her hair done. She literally could not touch her hair. She would have to wait for us to come into town to scratch her head out. And sometimes we wouldn't see her for like 2, 3, or 4 months. You see, all those years, Mr. Williams had watched my grandmother be a huge blessing to my grandfather. He'd watched her be a huge blessing to her family, and he secretly coveted that. When his wife died, he couldn't wait to kick some dirt on that woman so he could go after my granddad's blessing. But you see, what's a blessing to another man will be a curse to you. What's a blessing to another woman will be a curse to you. And by curse, I don't mean that the person is going to do something crazy. It's just that you won't be able to extract the blessing out of them. So while Mr. Williams and my granddad had the same female, they didn't have the same woman. Mr. Williams had her body, but she left her heart at home. In those type of relationships, the spouse that's playing the villain will often start disconnecting you from the people that love you. They will stop you from doing anything that you excel in because it's hard for them to sit and watch everybody else around you laugh and thrive around you when they don't see the point of you. They thought that you would become their sunlight. They thought that you would fill that God-sized void in their hearts, but they got with you and realized that they were still single. Sure, you guys were in a relationship where maybe you were even married, but they couldn't see you, and they blamed you for their blindness. This is to say that you can't wake up anybody that God has put asleep. And if you stand in front of a blind man, he still won't see you. If you pour out your heart to a deaf woman, she still won't hear you. Keep this principle and run with it. Only what you do for God will last. If you build your life and your relationships around that principle, you'll find yourself married to the right person in the right season. And the beautiful part is they'll be able to see parts of you that no one, including yourself, can see. That's because everybody else has sight. But when God brings somebody to your life, he gives them insight.